Awesome. So this works out pretty well. This is actually pretty close to what we want. So if I go in to my animation holder, what you'd probably want to do is say, okay, let me do a little like Control D and then maybe move this one up 2 and then Control D and move that one up 2 and press play. And it's like, okay, cool, that's pretty sweet. I just realized that since we don't have a super speed power up, we can't have this as bad, so I'm going to scooch this all back over so it can actually be finished. Good. A great ramp. Great ramp. Okay, so now if I press play, and if I go to my scene, okay. That's actually a weird one. I don't think I animated that. But, so you can see that if I take this and drag it over, for some reason it didn't update, which is a little bit odd.
Isn't it the same thing as if the animation's occurring all the way up there? With exact values, but the...
Oh, yeah, okay, so I snagged the Q prototype instead of snagging the animation holders. You're right. So if we reset these to 0, yeah, so don't do what I did and grab it by drag selecting, because that means you don't select the animation holders. Unfortunately, you select the Q prototypes. Unity just didn't really know what to do on that one, which is fair. I was asking for some weird stuff. Okay. And then I'm going to take all these because I reset all of them and move them down 2 again. So yeah, don't drag select like I did. If you did, you can reset everything manually. This is sort of a pain. So now if I press play and go back to the scene view, they're all moving. But this is nowhere near as cool as the one that I showcased in the beginning, where they're all moving out of sync. Unfortunately, Unity doesn't actually make that easy to do. All of the animations start at the beginning, and that's just how they are, usually. So one way we could handle it is we could start all of them at a different position and make 20 different animations from scratch. But that sounds horrible. We don't have time for that, so let's not do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a small bit of code to sort of offset the start of it so that they all start at different positions so that we get that cool wave-like feature. So we have to go back into our project, go into our scripts folder, and let's create, I think I call it animation offset in the provided files. So it will be animation offset. What time is it right now? 15 minutes. That should be like just barely enough. Okay. Cool. So what we want to do in this case, I'm going to delete everything again. So if we go back to Unity really quickly, and if we look at our Q prototype, you can see that after we made our animation, if you go down onto it, it actually gets an animator by default. So this is, so you saw there was sort of an animator versus an animation window. The animator is what plays the animations. So everything that has an animation on it should have an animator playing it. So the nice part is we can access this. We know it's on the thing, so we know we can access it. And we can also go over to this update mode, and you're probably going to want to click Animate Physics instead. I'll go over this again later, but I sort of want to touch on that we want to let the animator know that it deals with physics. In addition, I'm actually going to delete these two right here. I don't need them right now. And for this animation holder, actually I'll wait. We'll be good. Or, no, I'll do it. Okay, so what we can do with our animation holder is we can go ahead and snag it and drag it down into our prefabs folder. So now we have our animation holder inside of this, and if we drag it out, we can get another one. So this is going to be great because now we can make changes to the prefab and everything else will update. So let's go back to the code. So we know that we have an animator. So first off, we want to get access to it. So let's type in private animator anim. This is sort of an awkward convention in Unity, but the way that you get access to something is you say, inside of your start method, I'm just going to type it in, void start. It probably came with it on some of your guys' scripts, but I'm going to type it in. So void start, and you say anim equals, and we've done this before, get component animator. So I'm sure you guys are getting used to the pattern of Unity of something equals get component animator. In this case, implicitly, it actually means this dot get component animator. So we're saying on this object, let's get the animator. So there's actually a chance that this could return null. So there could be no animator. I'm not going to worry about that right now, but in the example code, it will have if statements accounting for that and sort of shooting out error messages. So was this dot get component, and now what we want to do, actually, so I guess quick idea of what's happening. So we have this right here. It's over 12 seconds. The way that Unity handles time in animations is it says, give me a sort of a fraction. So if we give it something like 0.5, that means start at 6 seconds. So start like right in the middle here. So like 0.5, so you just do 12 times whatever our fraction is going to be right there. So that's sort of going to be how we set it. So let's let the designers or yourselves change that within Unity. So if we go up and type in a public, we can do a public float, and we can just call this offset. Maybe offset % if you want, but I'm just going to call offset. Set equals 0. So we guarantee that's where it starts out. Cool. And that works out pretty well. If we go back into Unity, and if we take our cube prototype, so make sure to put this on the cube prototype and not the animation holder. You could design it differently. I just chose this. And then we're going to say add component animation offset. And now we have our offset right there. Perfect. That's pretty good. Some of you guys might be thinking that maybe someone else comes over, looks at your code and says, okay, it was about 12 seconds. I should probably offset it by 6. And it's like, oh no, don't do that. That's wrong. You should be pointing like 0.5. So we want to somehow signal to this person that that's what they should do. Unity actually provides us a way to do this, luckily. So if we go back into the code, and we go above offset, we can go, and this is called an attribute in Unity, I believe. Don't quote me on that. We can do open bracket, then type in range with a capital, then open parentheses 0, comma 1. So this means we're signaling to Unity, we want this variable to be displayed as something that goes from 0 to 1. Yes, or you're good. Any questions? Cool. So now let's go back into Unity and see. So now, if we're looking at it, hasn't updated, boom, it's updated. So now we have this nice little slider that we can drag around, and it only goes from 0 to 1. So anyone who looks at your sort of component that they put on will know, like, okay, this is a fraction from 0 to 1. I shouldn't put in anything else. So this is by no means necessary. I just think it's really cool. So we're like showing it off whenever I get a chance to. It's a great way to sort of augment what you're making. Great.
What does the offset control?
So that's what we're going to do right now. Yeah, it does nothing at all right now. So, so let me make sure I get this one right. So this is actually a pretty ugly function, I will admit. So bear with me on it, and maybe just come ask me questions afterwards if you're super interested. I think it's just something that you sort of need to do. So the way you're going to type is anim, so the animator that we just got, dot play, and then this really ugly thing. So first off, let's just type in little things like name. That's a placeholder. We're going to fill that in later. So we want to type in the name of the animation, or the name more or less. Then we want to type in 0. So that's the layer that it's on. By default, everything's on layer 0. So since we haven't messed with it, we're going to stick with layer 0. And then the normalized time, or that offset variable that we just made. So then you just type in offset. So now, this is the real kicker, this little name variable. So this one is sort of difficult to change, or it's sort of difficult to get. It's going to be really long. Yeah, just stick with me, bear with me on this one. So we're going to do anim dot get, let's see, what is it? Get current animator state info, this really long one. So the way that this works is that animators have states. Since we've only created one animation, ours only has one state. So we know for sure it's going to be in that when we start. That's cool. So we want to get that. You have to put in 0. Same thing as before. We want to get layer 0. Everything by default starts out in layer 0. And then short name hash. It's a little bit awkward. That you can sort of take that as like a label for what this currently is. Unity does not make this easy to do for some reason. Like, you would have to sort of understand how everything works behind the scenes. But I thought that this offset let you guys do so many cool things that it would probably be worth it to introduce. So if you don't understand this, don't worry. I'm sure people who've done Unity for a little while probably still don't understand this statement just by looking at it. So let me maybe make that a little bit easier to see. So in between commas, you can always add new lines and everything will still work. Any questions on how we got to here? I'm going to leave this up a little bit. Does anybody have difficulty copying this down? Or looks like everyone's pretty much good. Okay, let's test to make sure this works. Let's go back into Unity. We have our offset at 0. So let's go ahead and press Command D, Control D on this, drag out a second one. And on the second one, let's set the offset to 0.5. So now if we press play, we can go take a peek at it, see what happens. And they're offset from each other. So you can see now they're moving in opposite directions. Or they're, sort of halfway, and they'll line up a little bit at the beginning and then give off.